Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Navy SEALs, brought to us by Ocean. Navy SEALs is based on the film of the same name and was released on multiple computer systems, as well as, of course, this version on the Nintendo Game Boy. The game has you playing as Lieutenant Dale Hawkins through 5 different levels that loosely follow the plot of the film. The game is run and gun, with lots of different enemies and action, but it's one of those ones where you end up dying after only one hit. So here we go with Navy SEALs for the Nintendo Game Boy. When you start the game, you can start a normal game, or you actually can practice levels 2, 3, and 4. Doing so, you'll then be brought back to the main menu, and you can start the game or practice one of the other levels. This is actually an interesting mechanic to allow you to get slightly better at the game, but you can't practice the 5th and final level, which of course is the toughest stage in the game. As we begin the game, you'll immediately notice that your character has a relatively stiff walking animation, and that pretty much describes the game quite well. At the bottom of the screen, you have your current life count in the lower right corner, the ammo for the gun that you're currently using in the center, your score, as well as the time going down below it. Basically, if that fuse runs out at any point, you will lose a life, which is extremely annoying and one of the most annoying aspects of the game. Most enemies in the game die after only a couple of hits from your gun, and you fire multiple bullets out, especially when you're using the more powerful Uzi. The goal is, of course, to try to mow through as many of the enemies that get in your way while progressing through the levels, which have a relatively linear style to start off with, and then a little bit more maze-like as we get farther in. Entering the door at the far end is actually the end of the first level already. The enemies in the levels pretty much remain the same, as there's only a couple of types of enemies throughout. You have your main handgun that you'll be using most of the time, as well as, of course, the Uzi that you saw me use in the first level, even though the bullets look the same. The handgun will take multiple hits in order to take out an enemy. Thankfully, when you do hit an enemy, you will knock them back slightly. This will allow you usually to hit multiple enemies that may start charging you during certain smaller contained areas. Be very careful anytime you see like a cracked ceiling, because a piece of the ceiling will fall down on you and you'll have to backtrack quickly away the opposite direction in order to avoid it. At the end of this section, drop on down so you can pick up an extra life as well as some more handgun ammo before going through the door. Another weapon at your disposal is the sniper shot, represented by the lightning bolts in the lower right corner. When you have one of these, you can press select to take out all enemies currently on the screen. Be very careful of the falling ceiling here as we're climbing up the platforms, and over to the left here I end up running into one of the funniest glitches this game can offer, an enemy completely stuck in midair, and that actually happened multiple times when I played the game. When you're jumping with your character, sometimes you'll have to hold the up button before jumping, and this way you'll do a higher jump, so you'll be able to grab on to ledges and climb your way upwards. Every few steps there's going to be an enemy, so there's really no kind of just walking and trying to mow through enemies. Even when you end up getting the Uzi and can take out enemies with single shots, it's best to take your time, moving only steps at a time before kind of pausing to make sure that nothing is going to start running at you. When you make it here, you're going to do a couple of jumps, picking up some items before going through the door in the upper right corner. If you see enemies running towards you or ducking towards you, and you have an opportunity to hit them from a distance, do so before trying to attempt to get any closer to them. Sometimes enemies will run at you 3, 4, 5 at a time, and you can just kind of mow through them all before attempting to go up a platform. Once you make it over here, instead of heading to the right, we're going to climb on up, take out the enemy that jumps out of the door at you, and continue over to the left side. Wait a second for this guy to back away so you can drop down and shoot him, and make your way to the door. Now in the next room, you're going to climb on up. You can grab some extra time if you need it on the right side, but we're going to head to the left. Be very careful jumping here because there's spikes on both sides, and we're going to try to land in the middle so we can land safely and continue to the left. You'll notice another crack in the ceiling, which is pretty much going to be par for the course throughout the entire length of the game. The game has basically a couple enemies and lots of traps like that. On the far left side, climb on up and enter inside this door in order to complete level 2. Level number 3 takes place on a ship, and as you see, the level is more of the same types of enemies, and even though our goals may change up as far as objectives, whether it's hostages or other things, your goal is just making it to the end of the level, as you'll automatically complete the goal by reaching the end door of a particular area. Start off by working your way to the right, climb up a couple of ledges, stand on this one and take out the enemies before attempting to jump over this terrorist who's on the ground. In this upper right corner, you'll find extra ammo, a lightning bolt, and time. While, of course, you don't have to come up here, these items will be useful, especially stuff like time, because it ends up getting harder and harder to beat the levels quick enough, and you may end up running out of time, so you always want to pick up the clocks, especially your first couple of times playing the game, and the lightning bolts will always come in handy as well your first few times playing. Work your way now over to the left, of course enemies chasing us the entire time, and go inside the ship itself. Once inside, you're going to climb on up, we can grab some extra ammo to the left, and then start heading over right. Like a lot of ocean games that are based on films, one of the other main goals is collecting points, but since I'm not really a point guy, I usually don't bother picking up anything like extra points just laying on the ground. I'd rather not risk losing a life just to get an extra 500 points. Over here, go into the right side, take out all the enemies, then go back to the left and climb on up, eventually reaching into this door. Immediately duck and crawl and start shooting at a terrorist who's waiting for you just to the right of the door, and then drop down on the giant canisters. Once down here, you'll see a guy running towards you, so we're going to wait a second to take him out, make a big leap. I can grab those extra points just because there's no enemies over there, and then go through the door. As you saw, as soon as I came back towards the door, already 4 enemies had piled up right next to the door. Wait here for this guy to kind of run at us before we're going to end up dropping down and continuing to make our way. This area here ends up being one of the most compact areas to deal with enemies so far in the game. There's just a lot of them that are going to be coming at you from both left and right, so be prepared. Having the Uzi and some of the ammo left for the Uzi during that particular hallway will definitely help out. Be careful when climbing here. That guy, as you saw, likes to jump from the right side and try to get a hold of you, even though you think you're pretty safe being on that far left side. Once up here, climb up on top of the crates, taking out some enemies. A couple of times enemies will come from behind, so wait for them to kind of run and jump up to you, and then take them out. After everything has been kind of made safe, climb on top and be on this part of the ship. Stand on top of this barrel and take out more of the running guys before trying to jump down, because as soon as you drop down, you're going to have running guys from the right side, so you want to make sure you take out the ones from the left first, and then the ones that are going to come running from the right. Either way, when you make it to the next door, you're moving to the next level. And now we're in level number 4, and remember there's only 5 levels in the game, but it's one of those games that ends up being relatively challenging because of the amount of enemies they end up throwing at you, so your first time through it may take a lot longer in order to complete the levels. Start off by dropping down here, be very careful not to fall into the water pits that are set up, and go to the door on the left side. Sometimes if enemies kind of bunch up on you, like that one guy was crawling towards me, I can jump over him to take out some more guys and then turn around and take out him. Well, it seems like you have plenty of time to fire bullets and knock guys away. The hit detection on your main character can be definitely a little off, especially with running enemies. And you don't want multiple running enemies coming at you at one time. You won't be able to knock them all back. Ignore this door at first in order to pick up some extra time on the right side and then go back through the door. Throughout this hallway, you're going to have a whole lot of guys popping out of doors in the background that we can't enter. Once you've made it to level 4, you're probably pretty used to the enemies as well as the overall gameplay, so you shouldn't have any issue being able to progress as long as you take your time, make little tiny steps, and make sure that everyone's kind of taken care of before trying to advance too far. Be careful here, you can pick up an extra life if you do need it, but the enemies are starting to pile up as you make it room after room here in level 4. Always jump up here to grab the extra time before heading to the right and going through like another alleyway. Here you're going to have to manipulate the enemy above you so that you can get up again, and grab the Uzi ammo. Having Uzi ammo is always important since it is able to, of course, take out the enemies really quickly as opposed to just the handgun. Here, a piece of the ceiling does fall off, and as you see, I was able to get a couple of enemies kind of stuck in it, so that's always useful to have the ceiling being able to take them guys out as well. As soon as you enter in this door, run to the right, but don't go too far so the ceiling falls on you, but it gives you an ability to hit the guys on the left side. After the ceiling does fall, grab the time, and now head to the left and go to the next door. Once in here, there is some more of the Uzi ammo over to the right side, and then you'll have to take out a couple enemies before trying to jump over the small pools. When you do make one of the jumps, you may want to duck so that one of the enemies with the guns doesn't come up from behind and end up firing at you. On the far side, some guys are going to start running, but if you're quick, you can jump up and climb up to avoid them altogether. Keep heading to the right here. There's a couple of gun guys, and then a whole lot of enemies will start appearing, but thankfully you're at the end of the stage. And now we're already at level number 5, the final stage of the game. Everything that you've been preparing for, the enemies are all going to be the same. Nothing new is really introduced. It's just a ton, and I mean a ton of enemies, always spawning from both sides. So you're pretty much going to constantly be making just a step or two before having to turn around and fire behind you. Be very careful on this little walkway because a piece of it will break, and of course if you fall you'll land on the spikes below. Wait for this guy's bullets to go past you and then climb up and take him out. Then once on these platforms, the guy will kind of pop out of the door on the right side. Keep firing as you walk just a little bit, but make sure you don't end up falling off this ledge and go through the door with the arrow on it. Once here, take out a couple of guys and slowly progress. As you've noticed, of course, tons of guys are coming, so we have to be very careful while moving through this very small corridor. Enemies always love the bunch up in the game, and if their sprites line up perfectly, you won't be able to tell if it's only one enemy or two. So usually later in the game, I like to fire multiple shots, even if I only see one enemy at that point. In the next room, immediately fire to the right to take out the guy, and then you'll be able to take out the crawling guy who's going to be trying to sneak up on you. This area is definitely a little bit tight to be dealing with enemies, and you have some of the sneaking guys that like to block your bullets with their knives. Once over here, you're going to jump over to the left and then make sure that you grab this timer. As you notice, my time was getting pretty low. Once I drop down to the bottom area, I'm going to pick up the Uzi ammo in the left corner and then jump up here and go through this door. Once here, I'm going to jump between the two knife guys and jump over to the far right. Of course, it's recommended that you take out these two guys before trying to progress. Thankfully, as long as you don't get too close, that guy with the knife won't be able to kind of start sneaking at you. He'll just wait for you to take out all the other guys, and then when you approach, then the knife guys will start sneaking. Climb up here, you'll see some sprite flicker sometimes in the game when there's way too many enemies on screen. But either way, climb on up, do a very tight jump over to the left side, and then you're going to want to drop on down a couple of levels. Make sure you walk past these spikes and then drop down to the next level where you'll be able to go through another door. That little spike trap in the last room was really the last hurdle, as here's the final room of the game, just a bunch of enemies. Take them out as many as you need to, and make your way to the door and sit back and enjoy the ending to Navy SEALs. So there you have Navy SEALs for the Nintendo Game Boy. A really short licensed game from Ocean, but honestly I think one of their more well-programmed ones. The game is far from excellent in any real quality, however, for what it tries to do, it relatively plays well. I would say if you're definitely a fan of games like Rolling Thunder, for example, you may want to go ahead and give Navy SEALs a try, just because it is similar gameplay, that whole kind of running and gunning, but also having only one hit for your main character. I unfortunately have never played any of the other versions of Navy SEALs. There was ones on the Amiga, Commodore 64, so I don't know if they're exactly like this, but a lot of Ocean's licensed games that ended up being ported on many systems usually were relatively similar to one another. After the credits get done rolling, the game will go back to the main menu and you can start the game all over again. But with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.